Okay, good day, students. Today we'll be focusing on the 12th lesson, which is still under node expansion and narrative writing. All right. On lesson 11, we have gone through fact-based writing or factual writing. Today we'll be focusing on narrative writing. Now, for narrative writing, there are four important criteria that I would want you to remember. The first one, it has to be in the past tense because it is basically a recount of something that has happened. So remember to constantly keep it in the past tense. Have a clear story in mind. Plan the plot. Make sure you have a clear picture of the plot in your mind and check the essay after writing. Okay, the overview of this essay, it is primarily based on imagination. It requires thorough creativity. It is entirely original because it comes from your imagination. However, there are limitations to your imagination. We would discuss it as we move further. The writer has the freedom to influence the target reader with his or her personal perspectives on the narration. Okay, now when we discuss the advantages of narrative writing, it is entirely in the personal perspective of the writer. Therefore, the logic and rationale are decided by the writer. So it is always opinion over fact because you are the one who would design the fact for this story because it is after all your story. Therefore, the individual identity, style, imagination, personal interpretation, and thought would develop the story, whether the story is convincing or not, whether the interest is aroused and sustained or not, whether the story is impactful or otherwise. Now, when we discuss the disadvantages, firstly, the parameter is set by the question. The question has the parameter within which your limitation can travel. So your imagination has to be mature enough to make sense according to the parameter set. Although the story is original, although you own the story, although it is your narration, however, it has to be logically and relevantly confined within the parameter that is set. Okay. Language must be strong enough to convince the target reader. At all times, for narrative writing, the strength lies in its language because you can be expressive, you can express your thought and ideas to convince the target reader. Therefore, the flow and the fluidity of the ideas must be constantly consistent. It should always be consistent. Now, what is expected out of this narrative writing? That the interest is aroused and sustained throughout the essay, and the inception of the arousal happens in the introduction. So it has to be very attractive. Language is entirely accurate. Sentence structure is varied. Vocabulary is wide and used aptly. Topic is addressed with consistent relevance. Now, for the development of the ideas, you have to study the plot, plan the plot, write your plot in the sequences whereby you have one main story and this story is broken into 6 sequences or 5 sequences, depending on how you wish to weave your story. Okay, develop your plot with WH questions and then add the following to aggrandize your essay in terms of dialogues, expressive statements, quotes, idioms and proverbs, but only when they are needed and they have to be used aptly. Now, we are going to look at the sample 1 of a narrative writing, An Unforgettable Day. Can we have a volunteer to read?
Right, I'll go, sir. Last Saturday was a fatefully unforgettable day in my life. The incident which I witnessed will remain etched into my heart for a lifetime. At the same time, I am warmly thankful to God for having been able to play a vital role in what could have ended up as a dreadful robbery. It all started when I saw a suspicious movement in front of my house, which was at my neighbor's house. I was totally aware that they were not in as they have gone for vacation. I saw a big, burly man with a cautiously sullen look, hoisting things into a van parked right in front of the house. As I was assessing the man, it did not take much of a time to conclude that the man I saw was a total stranger. I have a perfectly fine rapport with the family of Uncle Tan. My neighbor, and all these years, I have not seen this man. Besides his look, his body language and gestures looked odd, so odd and unpredictable. He was particularly watchful and thoroughly careful with his movement. I started developing an odd feeling. A chill grip of fear engulfed me as I came to realize that I was witnessing a burglary. I realized that I am obliged to act very quickly. Without further ado, I grabbed the phone and rang up the police. I was skeptical as to quick they would how quick would they hit the crime scene, but to my pleasant surprise, they came quick enough. They came in just in time when the robber was almost done with his business and was about to abscond. The police came and surrounded him. I was witnessing the whole fiasco through the window from which I acted anonymously. At first, the burglar was very retaliating and to a certain extent violent. Eventually, as the police threatened him over with their arms and other paraphernalia, he did not have a choice but to give in and succumb. Soon he was arrested and taken into the police car. The things which he had robbed were confiscated and Uncle Tan was informed. It was a well-end day as everything was finally resolved. However, being a young witness, I felt the fear and anxiety of the incident. Should this have happened to me, I could have been injured, even to the point of fatality. I'm very thankful that I saw the incident and I could act promptly. Should I have delayed my actions, Uncle Tan would have suffered much loss. From this event, I am enlightened of the importance of being aware of the ways to overcome robberies, especially around housing estates. First and foremost, we must always make sure that our houses are well fenced and locked at all times. We should not compromise on the security of the house because we would know when we could possibly be victimized. Besides, we would also need to constantly be updated with the emergency contact numbers, such as the police and nearest kins. With all these safety and security measurements, we could possibly foil a robbery which may befall us.
All right. Okay. This sample essay is a bit too long, and the word limit is far too much to be compared to what is expected out of node expansion for PD3. But I intended this text to be long so that you would learn a lot of new words and you could get their meanings and put them into your daily conversation or daily usages as you write your essays. All right. Now we'll look into a much simpler sample. Sample 2, a picture-based story. Okay, you will have 3 pictures here for this particular question. Write your experience on suffering an untimely injury due to a fall from a mango tree. You can use the notes in the pictures below to write your story. So as you get this question, you study those pictures. You look into the details that is in the picture and also the notes given so that you could weave your idea into 6 sequences or 5 to develop an essay, a narrative essay. Okay. Now, can someone volunteer for this particular essay?
I will, sir. Some lessons I learned the hard way. Last Saturday was one such day for me. I had a painful experience where I suffered an injury, breaking my right knee. It all started after school. I was walking home. I was rather hungry on that day because I had extra classes and I forgot to bring my pocket money. As I was walking home, I came across a stretch of mango trees. There was one particular tree which was so full of red mangoes. The sight was very tempting. My taste buds were all activated as I was so famished. I lost my sense and went to the tree. Deep inside, I was aware that what I was doing is absolutely wrong. However, I succumbed to my hunger. As soon as I reached the tree, I laid my school bag beneath the tree. Without hesitation, I started to recklessly climb the tree. I reached the top of the tree in a jiffy. I was so engrossed in plucking the mangoes as they were all around me. I was so excited as I could pluck more and more fruits. Unfortunately, I stepped onto a rather brittle branch, which broke the moment I stepped onto it. With a loud sound, I fell onto the ground. It was quite a scene. At the moment, there was not much people. I felt a very sharp pain on my right knee, and I was unable to move my legs. I groaned in pain. Gladly, the owner of the orchard just came to the scene. He rushed to me, hearing my loud groaning. Engaging what would have happened, he did not scold me, but instead he assisted me to bring me to the hospital. Soon my parents were notified. I felt so embarrassed and at the same time thankful to the owner of the orchard. The doctors had confirmed that I had broken my leg. I felt so regretful of what I had did on that day. After that incident, I promised myself to never to indulge in anything like this anymore.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Now, if you were to look at this example, this is a much simpler example whereby the particular candidate has studied the picture, broken the ideas that he has derived from the picture into 6 sequence and weave the story. Okay, with a balanced size of paragraphing. Okay. Now we'll look into sample 3, which is a true story, but it's still a narrative story nonetheless. Okay, can we have a volunteer to read this?
I'll read it, sir.
Right.
Jose Salvador Alvarenga is a Salvadoran fisherman who spent 13 months adrift at sea. He is the first person in recorded history to have survived in a small boat for sea for more than a year. On November 17, 2012, Alvarenga set off on a professional fishing trip with a young fisherman named Ezequiel Cordoba, with whom he had never worked. Having embarked from a fishing village on the Pacific coast of Mexico's southern Chiapas state, they planned to be out about 30 hours hunting shark, tuna, and mahi-mahi. A few hours into their voyage, a storm struck that lasted 5 days and blew them off course. Alvarenga called his boss on the ship's radio for help, but it, and much of the rest of the boat's electronics, had been disabled by the storm. The boat's motor was also damaged. A search party was sent, but after 2 days with no success, their boss gave up and assumed they had drowned. Alone and without food or supplies, the two fishermen survived by eating raw fish, turtles, and jellyfish. They drank rainwater and turtle blood. As weeks turned into months, Cordoba became severely unwell from eating months of raw food and died. Alvarenga then endured another 9 months alone at sea until he eventually spotted a small island. Abandoning his boat and swimming to shore, he almost immediately met a local couple who alerted authorities. He had reached the Marshall Islands.
Okay. Now, Marshall Islands is somewhere near Philippines. If you look at the story, it is something like Life of Pi, but Life of Pi worked the other way. So he got into the sea somewhere near Philippines, near Mariana Trench, and he went all the way, and he ended up somewhere in the America, in the coast of the US. Okay, so that's about it. You have a writing task, which is from your textbook. Okay, write your story. Begin with the following sentence: nobody knew where we were. Okay, if you were to look at this question, it is just very brief. So you are free to develop your idea, and you are free to plan your plot and create your sequence and develop your essay. Okay, all right, so that is all for narrative writing for this class. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.